Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Marathon Handbook podcast. Today, I am joined by Dirk Friel, and I think we're going to get into some interesting conversations about endurance training and what the landscape of endurance training looks like these days with artificial intelligence and what the role of a physical coach might be, how technology is helping us train better and train smarter, but also maybe Dirk will make a case for why the human component of coaching is so important. So, Dirk, thanks for joining me today on the podcast.
Hey, thanks for having me. Yeah, this is great. Snowy here in Boulder, Colorado, so it's nice thinking about warmer running conditions.
Yeah, for sure. I'm here in Austin, Texas, and it got a little bit colder. We certainly don't have any snow like Boulder, but yeah, the running weather here in the winter can be pretty
Well,
enjoyable. You get
yeah,
the lull of the 90-degree summers, and then kind of we get fall during December and January, so
yeah,
still pretty good
yeah.
training weather here.
I've. It's funny. We had an amazingly warm fall, and I was starting to kind of not like it because my training was getting so homogenous and just like every day was so nice. I'm like, I need some cold weather to mix this up. So finally got that and got out on the Nordic skis. So I kind of like, all right, that felt good to get something new in my system.
Well, something new and something a little bit some adverse conditions I think can
Yeah,
sometimes help you maintain a little bit of that grit. You
toughen
know,
you up.
if the weather's too nice all the time, yeah, it makes it too easy to train.
Yeah.
So I'd like to get a little bit of your background, for you to introduce yourself into listeners. You were a pro cyclist, a coach, son of a pretty famous coach, Joel Friel. And so I'm curious, could you just give people a background into your athletic history
Yeah.
and sort of how this has shaped your understanding of athlete needs and your understanding of just the sport in general?
Yeah. I mean, it's been pretty broad. I started out as a, I don't know, 12-year-old, if you will. My parents are, at the time, early 80s runners. My mom did Boston. My parents did all kinds of marathons all over. My dad actually owned a marathon, the Rawhide Marathon
Hmm.
in Fort Collins, Colorado, which is no longer around. But one of the family businesses was event management. And so we had a 10K at the Colorado Run, this marathon, the Rawhide Marathon. We actually had the wheelchair world record was set on it at one time.
Hmm.
Um, so again, that goes back into my kind of family DNA, starting with running. And then the 80s, this new sport of triathlon started to pick up. And so we kind of hopped on the bandwagon of triathlon. But I early on, I mean, literally age 12, I was like, okay, I tried this thing, but I just love the bike. Like I love the distance I could cover. Um, my dad was head track coach at Rocky Mountain High School in Fort Collins, Colorado. And then one day he quit his job and he bought a running store. So we owned the one and only running store in town called Foot of the Rockies. Um, so I was living and working, in this running store, doing inventory, helping customers, et cetera, in my early teens. And then there was a bike shop next door, and he had one day bought the bike shop and tore down the wall. And now we had a triathlon store, which was way ahead of its time, obviously failed. But as a teenager, it was an amazing environment. Again, like I kind of gravitated towards cycling, but I was always around the running crowd and the triathlon crowd. And so I just took up cycling. We had a great, local racing scene in Colorado, in the 80s. And then come 19 years old, I dropped out of school and I told my parents I got a one-way ticket to Belgium and I moved to Belgium and I was there for I did 4 seasons in Belgium, 1 season in France. My first 3 years in Europe were amateur. My last two were professional. I ended up racing pro for 12 years, retired in 2002. Um, and along the way, the Training Peak story kind of begins, but the Training Peak story, harbors back to my father, and he wrote a series of books, the Triathlete's Training Bible and the Cyclist Training Bible, and many books since then. So kind of the DNA of Training Peaks started with him. And another family business at the time was coaching. So we were coaching, athletes around the entire world. And yeah, so that's kind of my quick and dirty, personal athlete story. I'm still racing bikes. I race ski mountaineering. Skimo is a big sport growing here in the West. It's in the Olympics for the very first time. So look for that in Cortina. I'm going this weekend to the World Cup in Utah, which decides the Olympic team. So it's really exciting stuff. So yeah, I'm still loving endurance sports and kind of, it's like all I think of.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's awesome, and I wouldn't expect anything less, I guess, from somebody who founded, coaching software. But it's great to hear, like, the passion, I think, the history, in the sport. But, Training Peaks, I think a lot of people will be familiar with probably the software, maybe having used it themselves, or
Mm-hmm.
at least, have heard of it probably. And I think, you are in your 25th year now,
Yeah.
like the 25th anniversary, is that correct,
Yep.
of Training Peaks? Fascinating. So, how did this all come about? Why did you start it? How did you start it? You co-founded it with your father, but how did this
Yeah.
whole Training Peaks thing come about?
I was still racing professionally. My dad was coaching full time, and this is the mid 90s. And so I started coaching with my father in 97. I only worked with cyclists. And then, come 99, I was just feeling the pain of the technology that we were using. And at the time, we were literally using the fax machine and email attachments. And so you would, fax the schedule for the upcoming week to the athlete. They would handwrite it, what they did every day. They might have a polar heart rate monitor, and which is at the time was a .hrm file. Um, Cyclists might have had an early power meter, like an SRM, which is a .srm file, or they may have chosen a power tap, which is a .csv file. So, and, along with every Sunday night, the fax machine, like just going haywire and spitting out training logs from the entire week. So I was always a week behind, if you will, on training logs,
Mhm.
which I was frustrated with. And then on top of that, I had a piece of paper with how they felt that I had like a file of what they did. And not only just a file, but I had to open up proprietary desktop software to look at that file. I had to get the SRM software, the PowerTap software, the Polar software, the Suntos, whatever the athlete chose. I had to go get that piece of software in order to open it and render it on my desktop, and then try and like match that up with what did they do Wednesday and how did they feel.
Hmm.
So it was just like horrible experience as a coach trying to siphon through all this disparate data all over the place. And the athlete experience was horrible as well. And hey, it's the late 90s. There's this thing called the internet. And I was like, Dad, let's get with it and create some kind of web-based calendar scheduling training log system. And so I pitched him on the idea in early 99. And neither of us were technologists. But luckily, the best man at my wedding, teammate of mine, Gear Fisher, was the only web developer I knew in the entire world. And he was living in Vail, Colorado. And I went up and had a beer and pitched him on the idea of helping me on this project that was just for our coaching business. There was no business plan. There was no raising money, no venture capital, no debt, like sweat equity. That's how we built the business. So luckily, Gear and I, stay up late at night after his day job and after I was training and coaching during the day, and we, hacked this thing together. So in early 2000, we started leveraging this web app, if you will, we had about 30 athletes at the time. And it really like made a difference for our coaching business. The experience was so much better for both the coach and the athlete. The results we got were so much better than, spreadsheet, fax machine, email attachments, whatever we were using at the time. And it kind of grew from there. And then other coaches, started to use it, and we realized this could be a great value to other coaching businesses. So started to effectively sell it to other coaching businesses. And now we had a new revenue stream. It wasn't coaching anymore. So we quickly separated the books, created a separate entity, a software company, a coaching company. But from that moment on, I started spending more and more time on the software side of things and helping develop that along with Gear. And it took on a life of its own, and it was really exciting. I loved working with other coaches. Cycling, running, triathlon is now we have every endurance sport effectively on TrainingPeaks. So it's really exciting times. It was early, so you had to do a lot of convincing. Not a lot of people saw the value in having a web-based app. And athletes, like, it was so hard to get athletes to, you had to get a cable, you had to plug it
Hmm.
in, download it, upload it. Like, there are like 8 different steps to get a file into TrainingPeaks, which is now is just, you hit stop on your device and it can go to 20 different apps in, 2 seconds.
Yeah,
So
incredibly
yeah,
easy. Syncing all my devices across one another. It's yeah,
exactly.
within the click of a button.
Yeah. So at different times back then, we were kind of early. We were the very first, I guess, web app where you could render a heart rate, power file in a browser. Until we did it, you could only do it on a desktop platform. So yeah. But yet even the industry didn't see the value in that. We showed that to the hardware manufacturers. And the response we got was, nobody looks at their data after they train. They only care about the train. They only care about the data while they are running or cycling.
That's
There's
funny.
no value in the data after they
Huh.
complete their workout. And we were like, no, that's when, like, the real value begins. Like, 90% of the value is once you finish. And literally, like, the industry did not understand that, but coaches did. So, that's what helped us grow, was working to help grow coaching businesses. And they would then demand the athlete go through the hard steps at the time. Now it's a lot easier.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's funny to hear that like the manufacturers of these products were like saying that nobody looks at the data after the fact because now it's like incomprehensible to think that they wouldn't see the value in having some way to like analyze all this data afterwards and that it was only important during. I mean, feel like a lot of the times now, a lot of people aren't even looking at the data during. It's always just let's analyze this afterwards. I mean, at least for me, when I'm looking at like something
Yeah.
like heart rate, more so, it's more I'm just looking at it afterwards. I'm not, paying much attention to it during
Yeah.
during
Like
the workout.
99% of the data that you can't look at during, because it's just, overwhelming,
Well,
right?
and
Why,
there's
would
so
you?
much of it.
No, exactly.
Yeah, right.
But
My stride rate, my cadence, I can't look at any of that during the workout. You
yeah,
can, but it's
yeah,
then you're losing focus on the workout and just
right.
focusing on the data.
And there's
Yeah.
perspective and relevance and questions that you come up with after the workout that didn't really matter during the moment, but the comparison over time is probably the biggest value. I always say, once you get a year's worth of data, the data becomes infinitely more powerful, because
Hmm.
now you can compare, this week last year, this month last year, time and zone this month last year. You can spot the trends of last year. Where did you kill it? Where did you get sick? Where did you get injured? Okay, what led up to that? If you're not collecting the data, again, you're just kind of like guessing. And yeah, intuition is a big part of being an athlete, which you have to train. But you can't remember, 3 years ago, how much time in zone 3 did you spend, or your 10K pace, this and that. But there's great value in that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that, and maybe this is something we'll get into, but like as AI becomes, I think, more of a thing, I'm just relying on hopefully one of these days, like I have all this data and a lot of it we don't know what to do with, but like I'm like eventually, hopefully it'll be able to spot like tell me where I got injured, tell me what I did wrong
Yeah.
to lead to this injury, or tell me what I did good to lead to this PR. But yeah, more data, at least just having it, even if we don't know. I mean, we're learning a lot about what to do with it, but I think just having more of it
Yeah.
at this point will like just amass as much as you can, so that one of these days when we have all these tools that can be super helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I totally agree. Like, collecting it, you don't have to overwhelm yourself. Just simply because you collected it doesn't mean you have to understand it or look at it. But I think as you grow as an athlete, you tend to have different questions along the way. You get more educated on the science and what the numbers mean. And then down the road, you might have a question that you can find the answer to in the data. So that's also what's really fun about this space, is it's always evolving. It's never going to stop evolving. And that's what's really fun too.
Yeah, yeah. And so I think that leads me kind of into my next question. We have so much data now. I mean, whether you're a cyclist, a triathlete, a runner, I mean, the amount of data you can get from a smartwatch and from the different accessories, say you're wearing like a running pod or something like that. We have so much of it, and I think this is a concern like within the health space too, where people are gathering data on their sleep and their,
Yeah.
biomarkers and their blood biomarkers and things like that. But we have so much data, and I think one of the concerns is that the data can sometimes be overwhelming, especially to athletes, and it might be providing more, say, of a signal or more of a noise than a signal. And so, what do you think? What's some of the newer data that are becoming available that you see as being helpful? Maybe some of the things that you see as being unhelpful, and then I'm curious where you see the role of the coach in helping to interpret all of this data, as well as software like TrainingPeaks in understanding all that data.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, just in terms of like new data, there's different value you can place on it depending on your needs as an athlete and coach. Certainly there's now like core body temperature, there's the core body temperature device. Certainly that is being used a lot within the pro cycling world. There's a lot of heat adaptation protocols happening starting in a couple weeks in January and throughout the entire season. At that level, every single team in Tour de France is leveraging heat training, and passive and active. And so there's data that comes along with that. But that's kind of like the icing on the cake, like
Mhm.
you think about, again, like going back to the analogy of building the home, the house, the foundation, the walls, the ceiling, the roof. Well, thinking of the heat adaptation, is more like the curtains. You know what I mean? The icing on the cake. TimeWare is another device that has come out that, again, in the cycling world is starting to be adopted. Ventilation, they can track VT1, ventilatory threshold 2, fat max, that type of stuff. To be seen, the value of that and how to apply it. But it's really cool, fun new data to look at: respiration rate, liters per minute of oxygen, etc. Um, Gosh, now sweat measuring
Mhm.
devices, NICs and BioFlow, and effectively TrainingPeaks is compatible with every single one of these new devices, as long as it's in the .fit file, which is kind of industry standard. If it's in the .fit file, it can get to TrainingPeaks, and graph it. So you might have a workout with 30 different data channels, depending on all the devices. Yeah, I mean, even in cycling, we can now, in TrainingPeaks, we show what gear you're in when you shift gears. Like, we plot that. You can plot that over power and heart rate and everything else. See, it's very, yeah, there's a whole lot going on, and that's the value of a coach. An experienced, coach can come in and help. Maybe the coach can look at a whole lot more than what the athlete needs to look at. And every athlete is unique and different too, right? Some athletes are data driven and they have the same questions as the coach, or they'll push the coach on certain data metrics, and they'll work together to try and find answers together. Other athletes, want to stay away from the data and just let the coach, go through it, siphon through it, and come back to them with simple protocols, and that's totally fine as well. Some athletes just need that cheerleader coach. That's still coaching. You don't have to be a coach and look at every single metric either. Um, so yeah, I think, though, I don't want to ignore all the data that we've already collected over the decades, which has a lot of value in it, which we're still learning about. How does, heart rate compare to pace? And we call that decoupling. And so we have reports that show decoupling over time. So you could repeat a certain workout that's, a lengthy endurance workout, and see that decoupling of, let's say you maintained a 7-minute mile for 75 minutes. What did heart rate do? at that heart rate or at that pace. As you get fitter, their heart rate won't climb as much. It'll start flatten, as pace is maintained. So there's a lot of value in pace and heart rate, that is yet to be unlocked for a lot of athletes.
Yeah, and I think that's important because, you know, they're like we have these sexy metrics and then
Yeah.
kind of the unsexy metrics of, oh, it's just heart rate and pace. Well, I mean, those are the OG endurance metrics,
Yeah.
power, pace, heart rate. Like, those are the things that really, really matter. I mean, yeah, there's a lot of stuff like ventilatory threshold and carbohydrate and fat
Yeah.
oxidation that we can be paying attention to. But going back to your house analogy, it's like we kind of have these three pillars, and then everything else is kind of just extra. Um, it's also interesting, I think, to consider, and maybe you can tell me if this is something Training Peaks does, or but there are these sort of newer ideas in endurance training coming about. So the idea of, say, durability
Yeah.
in endurance training, which is like your ability to hold on to a certain pace or maybe prevent that heart rate pace decoupling over time. So I mean, are these kind of newer ideas like being implemented into Training Peaks as you all kind of become aware of the data and some of these new physiological metrics that are
Yeah.
in vogue?
Absolutely. We have another product that's a desktop software that's very science geeky focused called WKO. And all of these reports exist in there. And that's where a lot of the kind of like Tour de France teams like work. And it's really a sandbox where a lot of experimentation can take place. But certainly durability reports are, very well used right now, especially within cycling, and I have a report where I can show, like, let's just say my peak 20-minute power output at when I'm fresh, after
Mm-hmm.
1,000 kilojoules, after 2,000, after 3,000, after 4,000. So I have a degradation of my 20-minute peak power output at the longer I go within a race. Now, my degradation is like 12%, after 3,000 kilojoules. Um, and so can I help improve that? A lot of racing has to do with that last, whatever it may be, in running terms, let's say the last 6 miles in the marathon, right? What can you do after the 20-mile mark? Hit the wall. That's durability. We've been talking about durability for decades. It's just now a different term and we've made it more
Mm-hmm.
sciency, but hitting the wall at mile 20 is durability. That's what it is. And so what can you do between 20 and 26 miles? A cyclist doesn't think distance. A cyclist would think kilojoules. So what can I do after 3,000 kilojoules? But a runner could think kilojoules. I mean, it's in the Garmin. It's right there. So, as you think about ultra trail running, certainly this is like where they live and die is durability. You're doing a 100-mile event that's your target maybe 38 hours, so how do you train that without doing a 38-hour training run? Like, you need to build that durability within training that can shine on race day. So there are reports that running coaches, especially in ultra, are looking at that help them define that degradation, if you will, that loss of top end fitness. We're all, it's a 100-mile race. We don't need
Mm-hmm.
speed work, but muscular endurance, strength training, that matters to a marathoner. Then at the ultra, endurance level, a lot of coaches are adding in weighted training whereby they may do, a couple hour run and then go to a hill and wear a backpack and carry, 10% of the body weight up a 30-minute climb. Athletes are doing this like 2 weeks out from UTMB is a really big race in Chamonix, which is 100
Mm-hmm.
miles, really, really popular, big ultra trail run. And I know athletes were prescribed this, even leading up to 2 weeks out from the race, doing hill intervals with a backpack. Now, they wouldn't run downhill with the weight. They would either have water bottles and empty that or leave the backpack at the top. The point being, yeah, this durability concept has always been around. Now we're starting to unlock it. There's a whole lot more yet to be uh, discovered on how to train it. But I think going back to that decoupling concept, it starts there. It starts with your aerobic conditioning, your aerobic base. If you don't have that, your durability is going to be horrible. You're not going to do well between 20 and 26 months, unless you have a consistent pace leading up to that point. Um, so again, it is that foundation of first is just getting out the door and getting that consistency. And that's number one thing. How many times did you run this week? Okay. You can now do 5 runs a week. Great. Okay. Now we can start to work on volume. And so it's just layers on top of each other. So don't go to the icing on the cake until you have, the batter made.
Yeah, I mean, it was funny because there was a recent study that came out lately where they were just assessing what variables were related to durability and endurance runners. And
Yeah,
I think the top two were your total weekly volume and the length of your longest run. It was like more durable runners, they run more and they run longer more
durability.
often. And it's like,
Yeah,
well, surprise, surprise, right? Like
yeah.
sometimes it's not very surprising what's going to lead to that. And yeah, the idea of durability is funny because I saw somebody comment on social media a week or so ago where they're like, didn't we just used to call this endurance? I'm like, yeah, but durability is like it's sexier, we need to reframe these things every now and
Well, I know
then.
I think of it as like, how much slower are you at the finish versus the start? That's,
Yeah, yeah, and
yeah,
it is a different concept.
yeah, yeah,
Endurance is, and I wanted to push back on that because I was like, well, like they're two
yeah,
different things. It's like,
yeah,
what's your VO2 max fresh versus what's your VO2 max after running, 20 miles.
yeah,
Like they're totally
yeah,
different things.
yeah.
Not just endurance.
Durability has a concept of performance to it,
Hmm.
where endurance is simply just time. Like
Exactly.
uh, there, there's no like performance layer on top of that really. But durability, you're starting to get into, well, how much slower am I at 25 miles versus 5 miles?
Yep. Yep. It's a concept that very, we could talk about it for hours, but we
Yeah,
have other things to talk
yeah,
about. But it's like one of my favorite topics lately, just because it's one of these things that I always tell runners, I'm like, well, you can kind of get faster without getting faster. Like if you improve
yeah,
your durability, you're going to run a better marathon, but you don't necessarily have to get faster. You can just train this like additional variable. So it's kind of interesting.
yeah. That again, I keep bringing up decoupling, but yeah, you can get more efficient. The economy,
Hmm.
means a whole lot. And so as you build that aerobic conditioning, that helps you stay at the same pace with the same energy demands longer. And that's the whole point.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And yeah, one more thing on that before we move on.
Hmm.
So in Training
Oh,
Peaks, so obviously with the idea of durability, there's
yeah,
this, we know that super shoes can kind of improve your durability, improve your efficiency in Training Peaks. And I do use Training Peaks, but obviously haven't taken advantage of all of these, the features yet. But is there ability to like track shoes within Training Peaks? So like tag a certain shoe for a certain run, and then that's going to, like you were saying with gear, say
yeah.
for a bicyclist, I can track my shoes within Training Peaks and then get additional data based on, oh, you're, more durable in this shoe versus this shoe. Are
Yeah.
those metrics available yet?
You can track shoes, but you can't really pull up a chart that show me all the times I use this shoe, data. So I think we can certainly do a better job there. I think that's an opportunity for sure. Um, and sticking on the concept of durability, I mentioned WKO, but we are working on those graphs, those reports coming into Training Peaks right now. So yeah, look for that to come, in the next, 6 months or so. So that's really definitely a trend that's picked up steam, and we're learning, from again, like more on the cycling side and bringing that to the running side and bringing that to Training Peaks.
Very cool. Yeah, that's certainly data I would like to see, especially just because most runners have like several different pairs of shoes now. So it
Yeah.
would be great to have insights on like, am I more efficient in this shoe? Do I have less decoupling in this shoe? And
Yep.
you know, and you can track it. And the lifetime is kind of what we're tracking right now. Just track your miles on your shoes to make sure
Well,
you don't,
yeah.
you know, retire them when they're ready.
Obviously that can could relate to injuries as well. Like,
Hmm.
did my
Totally.
did my percentage of this shoe go up? Hence, did it have anything to do with injury? Not sure, but that could be one question.
Yeah, totally. So I kind of want to shift gears a little bit and chat a little bit about coaching, the role of, human coaches and your thoughts on sort of these more automated training plans that are popping up. Obviously,
Yeah.
AI is becoming sort of huge in the endurance training space. There are certain apps like Runna. I mean, there are a lot of runners who are just asking ChatGPT to say give them training plans. And I say runners just
Yeah.
because it's a running podcast, but runners, cyclists, endurance athletes in general. So make the case for me, Dirk. Why do people need a human coach? What's the role of a
Yeah.
human coach, I think, these days where AI is becoming so proliferative in this
Yeah.
sport? And to be honest, generally pretty good, I think, by most standards. But, if you're a serious endurance athlete, what's the role of a human coach, both in
Yeah.
terms of, the intuition and then, how they're going to be able to interact with the software like TrainingPeaks versus how something like artificial intelligence might be able to do something similar.
That is a big topic. Where do I start? No, I don't want to poo-poo AI because certainly we're leveraging AI. Training Peaks will be leveraging AI.
Yep.
We want to be smart about it. We need to be trusted. So it's good that others are out there doing it first, so we can learn from it, if you will. Again, like the newer you are to the sport, the number one thing is consistency. Like I said, motivation. Those are kind of the two biggest things. If an app for $15 a month is going to do it for you, that's the best place to start. It's going to give you some sound advice. It's going to give you some exciting workouts, keep you motivated. But at a certain point, that's going to kind of tap out, and you're going to have to bring in that human expert who's been there, done that, has the experience to unlock the next level. You will plateau, with these basic AI kind of running coach apps. A lot of times I call them randomizers. Why? Because you get to tell it what you want to do today. You're like,
Mhm.
oh, I can't do that today. Oh, I don't want to do that today. Oh, okay. Here's three other choices. Oh, I want to do that today. If you do that every single day, you're just randomizing. It's just randomly giving you stuff. And it's all just trying to like appease your lifestyle or appease, what's exciting for you to go do today on the treadmill. It's not a coach giving you tough love and saying, well, actually, like all you're doing is training to your strengths and your
Hmm.
goal is over here. And to unlock this goal, you have to work on your weakness. If you rely on this app, you're going to continue to simply do what you like doing. That's fine. If you just want to have fun running, be fit, enjoy the experience, awesome. Like that's great. But once you set that goal, I need to improve my 10K pace. I want to get under 45 minutes. I want to break an hour, whatever it might be. An experienced coach can come in and the actual workout of the day is like 10% of, the secret. There's a
Right.
lot more unknowns than knowns. So your secret to unlocking, and getting to that goal may be within your nutrition. It may be within your pacing. You just simply run too fast the first 2 miles and then, or it may be the injury. Your right calf is the problem. Okay, well, let's get you into a movement specialist. Let's see the PT. Okay, oh, we know this and that now from the PT. Okay, I got a great strength person for you. We're going to work on mobility. We're going to do the foam roller. I can go on and on and on about lifestyle, about injuries, about nutrition, sleep. Like your secret may be your sleep routine. If you can
Hmm.
unlock that and get 3 months of really good sleep under your belt, you're going to be a new athlete. So my point is AI today for coaching apps where there's no human intervention, there's it knows like less than 1% of what it needs to know that a coach can unlock for you. But it might be great to get you out the door and get you motivated and to get that consistency. But at a certain point, you're going to hit that plateau, and that's where the human coach comes in. And coaching is not just science; it's art and science. And for human beings, you're a unique human being. Not all science is going to apply to you. Science is telling you the middle of the bell curve. You are either right or left of the bell curve. And by what percentage right or left, you're not sure. But a coach can come in and say, aha, you're way over here on the left side of the bell curve. You should not be doing this thing that science says to go do, right? Um, and they can unlock that art. How do you fit this workout into your lifestyle? And if today, your work, family obligations took up more than you expected and you skip today's workout, what does that mean for the next 3 days? What if your right, calf is now tight? What do we do? What interventions do we do? So it's just like you can't even compare the two. They're just completely different services. And so that's going to get better. And AI is here to help the coach. TrainingPeaks will be adopting AI in order to be an assistant to the coach to make them a better coach. So I guess that's a little bit of my ramble, but it's here to stay. It's going to get better. And yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think the idea of it, I love, the way you phrased it about it being an art and a science, because, where AI is, useful is, like you said, in it being a science. And it's great at doing, it's great at giving outputs based on the information that you give it. But again, it only then has the information that you give it. So unless you provided all of the details on your family life and on your stress levels and on your sleep, then it's not going to be able to integrate all that information. It just knows, hey, you're training for a marathon and it's 12 weeks away and you want to do this many workouts per week. But a coach is able to then bring in all these nuances of, what are you doing as a full-time job? How old are you? What is your history? I mean, none of that stuff. You could obviously, in theory, give AI access to all that stuff by like just sitting down and telling it all of that. But few athletes are doing that, and few of these AI coaching tools are integrating all that information, I think, these days yet.
Yeah. And I think of like if there's two athletes and they're twins and they have the same goal, they're still going to have different physiology, different recovery profiles. We say phenotypes. They have different one's more of a sprinter, quick power kind of person, one's more of an endurance diesel type of person. They have the same goal. They want to break 45 minutes in the 10K, but they have different jobs, different families, different lifestyles. You're going to train those two individuals as individuals. And if you look at the best in the world, they use human coaches, and the human coach may be leveraging AI somehow along the way, primarily to analyze. They're not leveraging AI to tell them what to prescribe for tomorrow. So I always say, like, if the best in the world are doing it like this, why am I doing it the complete opposite? Especially if I have a big, hairy goal in front of me, that's where I want to do it the right way. Most of us only have whatever it may be, 8 hours a week to train,
Mm-hmm.
and so we need to make the most of that 8 hours. And I would hate to see an athlete just repeat the same mistakes for the next decade, and they have 8 hours a week to train with big goals and they never reach that goal. At least get that human experience interaction going. And a lot of times the reason why we're signing up for these events is for that human connection. Oftentimes you can't relate to your spouse, on this topic because they don't have the same interest, but to connect with a human that understands and gets that passion and that joy, when you upload that workout and in 5 seconds, a human gets back to you and says, great job. Or they might say, you know what, you royally messed up today's workout. That was not the point. You went back to your strength. We were supposed to focus on your weakness, your limiter. Guess what? Tough love. We're going to repeat that workout tomorrow. Do it right. Like, athletes need that tough love. AI will always appease the human and tell them what they want to hear at this stage right now, from what I've seen. And that is not the role of a coach, is to not always tell you what you want to hear.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Maybe, yeah, and I mean, maybe we could adopt an AI with a more
Mean.
tough love personality. Say, hey, don't
How mean
treat
do you
me
want your
bad
coach
instead
to
of
be?
good. Yeah, exactly. Dial up the meanness or whatever. But yeah, so there's the potential for that. But yeah, I think one of the fun things about either being a coach or being an athlete and being coached is that interaction. Like
Yeah.
my coach texting me about my workout. Hey, great job today. Like when you get that from if ChatGPT tells me good job, I don't that doesn't mean
It's
anything,
the
right?
same
But your
message.
coach
Yeah.
being excited, the coach being excited for you after a race or giving you feedback, like that's part of the fun, I
Oh,
think, of endurance sport. And not everybody
yeah.
wants that. I mean, you're right. Like there are some people who just, hey, I want to complete this marathon. I want just AI to tell me what to do to get there. I guess that's fine, but I think a lot of the people, especially people listening to this podcast, they're going to be more interested in that interaction side of it, and
Yeah.
really pursuing like a tougher goal. And I think that's half of the fun
Yeah.
is interacting with a coach or coaching somebody.
Yeah. I think about trends that are going on today. You mentioned durability. Obviously, nutrition is another
Hmm.
one, like carbs per hour, right, et cetera. That's a question athletes have. They're seeing this, the headlines all over the place, 100 grams an hour, 120 grams an hour, whatever. So the athlete has that question. They go ask ChatGPT, it'll come back with the answer they want to hear, or they ask the wrong question. An example may be like, I, I cramped in my last race. How much sodium should I take in? Like
Hmm.
they jump to an assumed conclusion. They asked the AI how much sodium, okay, but that had nothing to do with their cramping. It's because they went out too fast and they did their 5K pace in a 10K race for the first mile and a half, and hence they
Right.
was out and they cramped. That had nothing to do with sodium or salt intake. So I think if a lot of times the athlete will ask the wrong question. They go down the wrong rabbit hole, which has nothing to do with the actual limiter that they're needing an answer to.
Yeah. And so, what are some of the ways, you mentioned AI being, coaches using AI, kind of this collaboration rather than like either or, which I think is obviously the case for most people. So, what are some of the ways, you mentioned Training Peaks sort of embracing AI and beginning to embrace it a little bit more. What are
Yeah.
some of the ways that you see coaches being able to leverage AI within the Training Peaks app to kind of have this, the human component that athletes sort of want and need, as well as taking advantage of, frankly, just the immense technology that AI and the abilities that it's going to give us that a coach may not be able to have in sifting through all the data. Because even the best coach, even the most knowledgeable coaches, needs help sifting through all this data. So, what are some of the ways that coaches are using Training Peaks maybe to leverage AI to help athletes train better?
Yeah. Well, right now, like I think it's going to start with profiling of the athlete. That's where we're kind of honing in on AI capabilities. Right now, we can do a really good job of profiling a cyclist with a power meter. We can model their threshold. We can model out what's known as W prime, or what we call functional reserve capacity, being that amount of energy they have above their threshold, which would be very
Mm-hmm.
important for like a 10K, 5K, 10K, mile runner that does a lot of anaerobic type work. So certainly it always kind of, for good or bad, right, starts in the cycling world. Why? Because we have the most data, the most accurate data. Power meters, are a wonderful tool. But the lessons kind of learned there, the reports learned there, we bring over to the running crowd, but they're just simply not as accurate. We're not
Mm-hmm.
measuring the exact work output, right? There's a pace, but did you have a headwind or a tailwind? Was it uphill or downhill? Was it cold or, you're not measuring the actual workload. So they tend to be not quite as accurate, but the same concept is there. So I think like right now you can do that modeling in Training Peaks. We show you that W prime functional reserve capacity, and that's measured in kilojoules.
Mm-hmm.
So you have 15 kilojoules worth of energy to expend above threshold. Once you tap out that 15 kilojoules, you're done. You're sitting on the curb, right? But you can replenish that battery. If you only did 10 kilojoules of energy above threshold and you took it easy on a descent, you can recharge that battery. We model that. That will be certainly coming to running. So I think we're
Hmm.
starting within the modeling. Another area where we're leveraging AI is we have a Training Peaks virtual. Right now, it's only for cycling, but a lot of runners do ride to supplement, add, to gain aerobic base, to gain, you know, more intensity without the pounding on the body. But within Training Peaks Virtual, we have bots. You can actually set up a ride or a race and race with these fake folks, these bots, and they actually learn your phenotype. They learn your capabilities, and so they become more and more kind of like you, if you will, and so it becomes more fun to race. And the bots have different phenotypes themselves. That will come, into running. We will have a running Training Peaks virtual, so you can run indoors on the treadmill. It's going to learn your particular phenotype as a runner. It's going to tee up workouts that are appropriate for you. And also within racing, like have other folks around you that you're racing, right? Um, and then I think like building out workouts, like coming out with workouts that are appropriate for that athlete that could be teed up to the coach. The coach is then defining, okay, I really want to hone in on this type of capability. What are workout suggestions that would fit this need? So it's, AI coming up with those workout suggestions for the coach to then prescribe, or actually like maybe even a schedule of proposed workouts that the coach could, edit or deny or accept, so there's a lot of stuff happening behind the scenes and on the analytics side, to help the coach decide how to profile the athlete and then how to plan for the athlete. But I don't want to label it AI. Like, I don't want you to know you're using AI. I mean, when you're leveraging AI in Training Peaks, it shouldn't be like have a stamp on it that it's AI. It's just
Hmm.
the tool at the right time to help the coach and athlete. But it should play this like natural kind of role that you don't, it's just like, it's just smooth that you just like in your Apple phone or something. You don't know it's AI or not
Right.
sometimes, And so I think that's the best way to go about it.
Yeah, I mean those three very exciting areas. I think I agree that the phrase AI or the term AI is kind of just misused and thrown about now, and people hear it and there's like a visceral reaction to it because of the artificial, I think, nature of it. But
Mm-hmm.
like you said, they're just tools. The modeling is cool because with running, runners are beginning to use power meters. I use a power
Yeah.
meter when I run. I have stride power meter on my shoes, so in theory, then I could get the same type of modeling that a cyclist gets with, watts prime and critical power and things like that. Even if I log into my app for my power meter, I have sort of the power profile that you might see for a cyclist. So
Mm-hmm.
those tools I think are going to be here. Not all runners are using power meters, but they're beginning to adopt it more
Yeah.
these days. So that's exciting.
And we have normalized graded pace. So the
Hmm.
equivalent of, if it's a 3% climb, what's the equivalent pace if it
Right.
were flat? So we show that within Training Peaks, which is can be very valuable for sure.
Yeah, totally. So, last kind of little area I wanted to touch upon, just I'd love to hear some of your thoughts on maybe interesting trends that you see in
Mm,
endurance sports. I feel
yeah.
like the last few years, maybe 5 years or so, have kind of seen endurance athletes and coaches alike, but sort of embracing like the cutting edge science, which I am totally in favor of. But when it comes to high carb, heat training,
Yeah.
things like lactate monitoring, I feel like athletes are recognizing their utility, getting into the science more, and sort of pushing the edge. So, what are some of maybe like the top trends that you're seeing in endurance sports lately? What are maybe some of your favorites or things that you're trying out yourself? I'd be curious to
Oh,
hear your thoughts on that.
yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, I have a couple fun. I mean, mentioned this already. The core. Um,
I need
yeah,
to get myself one of those as well because I'm big into the heat training these days.
yeah, and I'm interested in different. I always ask coaches the protocols that they're leveraging, whether passive or active. I think this is a really exciting area. It's absolutely beneficial. There's more studies coming out about it. We need more. But it's independent of the temperature of the race. Obviously, the hotter the
Right.
race, the more benefit you will get. But even in a cold race, the whole point is building that blood plasma volume, the hemoglobin. It's almost like the poor man's altitude training.
Yeah.
But then you're like, wait, hold on, altitude training. I can do altitude training. Well, how does that compare to heat? How do I work them together? Oh, wow. Okay. Well, that's a whole nother area of science that is just starting to get explored. But the concept now is layering these additional stressors on the body are probably not a good thing, but separately they could benefit each other. So, we're seeing teams say, okay, let's start heat adaptation in January. We're going to do 5 days a week. After your training ride, come in and do 45 minutes in the heat zone, roughly 38.5 Celsius. You can read up on that, but let's try and stay in 40 minutes in this zone, which actually means it's not pace and power wise. It's not a hard workout, but
Hmm.
the heart rate will rise quickly under the heat stress. But do we do heat training before we go to altitude? At altitude, we stop the heat training because that's too much stress on the body if we layer it, and then leave altitude camp, come back down sea level. Do we reintroduce heat training? Can that help extend the benefits of altitude training longer by introducing heat acclimatization training? These are all questions that certainly at the elite cycling level is being done, but who knows if it's being done correctly. They're still learning,
Hmm.
experimenting, and to be written about and learned from. And then that information gets disseminated out to many other sports. And obviously running coaches are doing this as well. Um, it's just not as coordinated within a team climate across 40 different teams. It's just a bigger marketplace, if you will, at the pro cycling level. So we tend to learn more there, and it's really kind of an open. There's a lot of dialogue happening, which is great, and a lot of openness, which is awesome too. Um, in the cycling world, which is great. So I think that's one big trend, in terms of like how to help the athlete. And that is one area where, yeah, if you're going from Colorado and going to race in Florida, in the month of February, like you can understand how that can be beneficial, even if
Hmm.
you're, a 50-minute 10K person, like to get a little bit of, heat adaptation going before you go to Florida, it would be beneficial. And that, even though in some cases that's more icing on the cake. Um, so I guess that I think like the holistic concept of training, bringing in experts from different domains. We see teams that have on staff sleep experts. So the sleep coach is working with each individual athlete, and each athlete has different needs. Some sleep great; they don't really need the sleep coach. Others really need a lot of help. And so there's a lot of things that a sleep coach can help unlock for that athlete to get better sleep strategies. Or traveling, across 10 time zones to your A race. When should you fly? How do you deal with, all that time change and time zone messing up your sleep rhythm, et cetera. So I think that's one aspect. Getting strength coach. That's another part of holistic training. Strength is becoming more and more a part of all elite athletes training programs, 12 months a year. Again, in cycling, it's 12 months a year. They're doing strength training, mobility to the individual. And so with all of this, at the end of the day, it's about training the individual. We're not
Hmm.
saying we don't all need the same strength training. We don't all need a sleep coach. We don't all need a nutrition coach. Yet those may be the areas that can unlock enormous secrets, enormous potential for you if you get with an expert. So yeah, maybe you should work with a nutritionist for the next few months and see if there's anything there, or sleep expert. These people exist, they're easy to find. So yeah, and then obviously, at the team level, data analyst, all these teams, even the runners breaking the sub 2 hour Kipchoge,
Hmm.
like there's a lot of data modeling going on there. And that's all starting to trickle down, so what we learn at the elite eventually trickles down, which is fun and ever evolving.
Yeah, it's funny. I feel like it's a lot of stuff like starts in cycling and then the elite runners and then it kind of trickles down just to everybody else. But cyclists do tend to be, I feel like, a little bit ahead of the curve in terms of the technology and embracing the science. But and I'm not quite sure why that is, but I feel like the sport of running just tends to be a little bit more I don't know, like grassroots a little bit in some way, and cyclists are
Yeah,
like embracing the technology, but a little bit of that is changing because I do
it's
see
definitely
runners doing a
happening in
lot of these
running
things now.
equally
Yeah.
as much. I think in just smaller circles, and not as well known, but there's a lot more cross pollination happening, I believe, across sports. And I work in like I'm going to a ski mountaineering race for the Olympic selection, this weekend. I love like changing hats, and we're all trying to solve the same puzzle in different ways. We all have the same question. So, but we go about it in different ways, like, and so there's a lot of value in talking to coaches in other sports to see how they frame the solution, with the results they've seen, and how can that maybe apply to your sport. So there's a lot of value in getting out of your normal, vertical, um, and getting out and kind of cross pollinating and hearing from others.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree as well. And just regarding some of these strategies, I think I'm curious, just to use like the heat training for example. So because athletes I think are so interested in these strategies, is sort of Training Peaks adapting to be able to say prescribe some of these different protocols rather than just a training session, like prescribe a heat protocol
Oh,
training session within Training Peaks or prescribe a specific gut training protocol within Training Peaks. I mean, are you guys sort of building in these capabilities so that athletes can sort of utilize these techniques and test them in training and sort of see how they're impacting their training quality and performance? Things like sleep also maybe come to mind. Like, I mean, I'm sure, Training Peaks is integrating data on wearables and
yeah,
on maybe even my nutrition, my caloric intake. I mean,
yeah,
are there ways that athletes can use the software for those additional things rather than just do this workout and I'm plotting my
yeah,
pace and power, but
yeah.
what was my core temp during this workout? I think all those things are useful, and athletes pushing the edge are also going to want to maybe take advantage of those kind of tools.
Yeah, no, great question. We incorporate all this. So there's certainly nutrition apps that we are compatible with. There's Fuel In, Hexus,
Mhm.
Food Coach are kind of the three big ones we're compatible with. When I say compatible, meaning they read your completed workout data from us. They look at tomorrow's training and they come back to you with the 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 evening meal suggestion and the morning breakfast selection, as well as tomorrow's nutrition demands within the workout. So it's constantly looking at, what did you do, what are you planning to do, okay, here's a suggestion, or these are the meals. So that's doing a round robin between us and these other third party apps. Certainly. So that's something to look into. If that, and there's actually nutritionists leveraging that as well. So like Hexus is software that a nutritionist may use, and they
Mhm.
like it because it's interacting with Training Peaks, pulling what you did, looking at what your coach put in for tomorrow or the next 2 days. The nutritionist can see what the software suggested. They can edit it based on your
Mhm.
needs or whatever, as an athlete, and then accept it, and then it gets sent to the athlete. Sleep, uh, right. Sleep isn't to the same level as nutrition, but certainly we're tracking HRV, hours of sleep. After those two metrics, I probably would kind of ignore the rest personally.
Yep,
Like, I just don't
I
believe,
agree.
yeah. So REM, deep, like, don't even look at that, but it's more about the hours. When did you go to sleep? When did you wake up? Maybe restlessness might have something, because it's just movement. And then HRV. But we don't have like a sleep coach third party app. It probably exists.
Right.
Like, if it does, contact me. Like, there may be opportunity there, right? But we certainly have sleep coaches that are using Training Peaks to put in a sleep hygiene protocol, temperature guidelines. There are mattresses now where you can dial the temperature of the mattress, which is coming into play. Different, like, most sleep experts won't recommend melatonin. They're going to do some other ideas, nutrition guidance to help with sleep. But in some cases, melatonin they will prescribe for jet lag, for example. So certainly we have, coaches, sleep coaches leveraging TrainingPeaks. I don't know what else. Oh, you said a nutrition like protocol, like gut training, like protocol type stuff.
Yeah, so say gut training, or
Yeah.
athletes are like looking for 90 to 120 grams per hour, like things like that, where I can test out
Yeah.
these different carbohydrate fueling strategies, I think.
Yeah. I think that's where the expert comes into play. Every
Mhm.
athlete's unique. Where are they starting from? What can their gut handle? What's the target? What's their intensity? What's the goal of the race? What's the goal of the training? Is it high carb, low carb, based on the training phase? I think nutrition is becoming more, we're starting to see more periodization of
Mhm.
nutrition, which then does affect the actual nutrition within the training itself, like the goal of today's training. So at the end of the day, Training Peaks does not have a methodology. I mean, if you haven't figured it out by now, like, we're not a coach. We don't want to replace the coach. We want to make the coach better, smarter. Um, and we're the tool that they leverage. So I feel like you need to work with a human coach to help with these gut training protocols, which I do see value in training the gut. Again, more science coming out on that, but we don't have like a plug-in, protocol training plan to help you get to 120 grams an hour. And that probably shouldn't be your goal for a majority of listeners either, because they just simply don't, burn that many kilojoules an hour.
Mhm.
But kind of rule of thumb I do is I'll look at the kilojoules, I'll cut it in half. That's my target is, if I really want to fuel well, it's like replenish half my kilojoules. Okay, but that's 4 grams, you know, 4 calories per gram of carbohydrates. So I divide that by 4, divide that by the number of hours or, of the training. Okay, lots of math going on there.
Yep.
But it gets pretty simple, after a while, and you understand like, aha, this workout was 1,500 kilojoules. Okay, 750, divide that by 4. That comes out to be about 90, for a 2-hour workout. Like, I can handle that, or maybe I
Yep.
need to work up to that. That's a little bit of a rule of thumb. In cycling, we have fueling insights within Training Peaks. We actually know your gender. We know your profile as an athlete. We know your body weight, and we come up with fat, carbohydrate, you know, calories burned, which can help modeling. But again, that's not saying eat this many carbohydrates, per hour. It's just
Mhm.
like, hey, this is what we estimate you burned. Work with an expert, work with a coach to figure out your strategy.
Yep. No, I mean, I think that's all fascinating, and I mean, it's super cool to see y'all are kind of updating based on things athletes are interested in, based on where the recent science is going. So, last question for you, I think, what are you most excited about for, say, the future of training and coaching? What is maybe the one thing that you think are most excited about, or that you're working on at Training Peaks that
Yeah.
you're most excited to implement and say in the coming year?
I'd say it's a funny, but it's funny. We've never been social. And what I mean by that is, yes, we have Instagram and all that stuff going, but within the app itself, it's been one-to-one. We communicate
Mm-hmm.
athlete, to coach, coach to athlete communication. We have that going like one-to-one, but we're coming out with, group communication. So a coach may be coaching a group of women for the local 10K, and they meet every Wednesday, and they can have a chat within the group, within the run group. So I'm looking forward to more of these kind of community building solutions within Training Peaks to feel more of a broader community, and that's coach led, and so it's coach guided. if you will, these communities. Um, so I'm looking forward to that coming out in the next couple of months. That relates to Training Peaks Virtual, because within Training Peaks Virtual, you can do a workout, like it might be a private workout that your coach set up just for their clients. And it's every Wednesday at 3 o'clock. And you can show up and there's going to be your fellow athletes there, that we all have the same coach. It's a coach led workout, and we can do it at our own individual intensity levels, but we're all doing a zone 2 workout, or we're going to do these 1 mile repeats, or whatever it may be. That's going to be coming to running. We have that today in cycling. That's a community, coach led community. A coach could create public group rides and races as well, to build a broader community. So I think, like, yeah, in general, building more community solutions within TrainingPeaks products is what I'm most excited about.
No, that is exciting, and I think that's something a lot of athletes are looking for these days. And
Yeah.
whether you're a runner or cyclist, but just looking for these apps as things become more kind of virtual, and people, like, I think they're meeting up, maybe just as much, but people want virtual options as well. So
Yeah.
that's very cool.
Yeah.
Exciting.
Yeah. Fun stuff. Very cool.
Awesome. Well, Dirk, thanks for joining me today. I think this was an awesome discussion just to hear, I think, future of like what training looks like, how we can use the software. I think that, I mean, myself included, I use Training Peaks. I'm on it. I don't use it enough. I should probably use it a little bit more, because I am, I love looking at all the data and have all this data. But I would encourage people to check it out, if they haven't already. Where can people find you if they want
Yeah.
to maybe say, hey, if you're on social media? Obviously, people can go to Training Peaks and look it up and give it a shot. But if they want to maybe follow you personally, are you active on social
Yeah.
media, or where else can they find you?
First, I have to say there's no right way to use TrainingPeaks, so don't feel bad that you're. There's a lot in there. It's like Excel spreadsheets. So there's no right way to use Excel spreadsheets. Um, yeah, I'm on Instagram primarily, just Dirk Friel at Instagram. You can email me, dirk@trainingpeaks.com, if you're shy. Yeah, so that's how they can find me. And I also have a podcast, Endurance Unlimited podcast, Training Peaks. I'm not the only host, but we really try and have coaches and experts on board, on the show to help, again, share what they're learning about whatever they're working on.
Awesome. So yeah, I encourage people to check that out. And once again, thanks for joining me on the Marathon Handbook podcast.
Thanks, Brady. Thanks for having me on.
Yep. Have a good one.